The Shalan Dominion, proud and ruthless, believed themselves clever enough to challenge the silent boundary that Earth had set long ago. They had heard the stories, of course the whispered warnings, the vanished fleets, the cold, empty space, beyond which no one returned. But arrogance was a powerful thing, and a rogue faction within their ranks thought they could slip past the warnings. They built experimental stealth ships, vessels designed to evade every sensor and cloak their presence from detection. Their goal was simple: map the secrets of the Terran core worlds, uncover what was hidden, and bring that knowledge back to their empire to secure dominance. The fleet slipped through the outer patrols undetected, moving like shadows across the dark void, closing on the heart of human space. For a fleeting moment, their sensors locked onto Earth's blue-green glow, a sight no Shalan had ever seen before. But the moment of triumph was shattered as every system aboard their ships shut down, one after another, with chilling precision. Lights flickered, engines powered down, and the silence that followed was broken only by a voice, not over comms, but inside the minds of each crew member. It was calm, cold, and clear in every language spoken among the Shalan. You were warned. There was no panic, no screams, only the creeping realization that they were no longer in control. Slowly, as if pulled by an unseen force, the entire fleet was transported back to their home system, orbiting under the watchful eyes of their own people. They were unharmed physically, but the mark they carried was heavier than any weapon. Across every hull, visible even from orbit, glowing symbols appeared, etched in light, each one a record of the war crimes committed by the Shalan Dominion over centuries. These were not just marks of shame, but a permanent reminder, a living history, broadcast for all to see. The fleet's return was met with stunned silence and fear among the Shalan people, for they understood what had been done. Terran justice did not come with destruction or death. It came with remembrance and reckoning. The humans did not seek revenge through bloodshed, but through memory, forcing their enemies to confront their sins and never forget the price paid for betrayal and cruelty. The Shalan would carry these scars forever, a warning to themselves and every other power that dared to cross the line. Far beyond politics or war, it was a message etched in the stars. The galaxy must remember what was done to Earth, or it would face the same fate again. And the humans would be there, silent and watchful, ensuring that history never repeated itself. The galaxy had changed, and with it, so had the story of Earth. Across star systems bordering Terran space, memorial beacons now stood tall, silent guardians that hung softly through the void. They did not scream warnings or flash threats, but instead projected living history's tales of the Silence War, of betrayal born from fear and misunderstanding, and of humanity's answer that was neither vengeance nor destruction, but a calculated, unyielding protection. These stories were etched into light and sound, reaching every species, reminding them of the cost of crossing a line that was no longer just a border, but a sacred boundary marked by sacrifice and solemn remembrance. The newly forged Edge Protocol was accepted not because of treaties or political pressure, but out of deep respect and shared understanding among the major powers of the galaxy. It was a pact born from the knowledge that the Terran border was more than space. It was a grave marker for all who had suffered, and a lesson for those who might forget. No fleet dared cross it anymore, not out of mere fear of retaliation, but because they understood what Earth had become through years of silence and survival. It was a civilization shaped not by rage, but by a fierce commitment to truth and memory. This legacy rippled far beyond the nearby systems. Even in the farthest reaches where light barely reached, young captains listened wide-eyed to old veterans' tales. When asked what lay beyond the Terran exclusion zone, the answer was always the same, soft but heavy with meaning. Nothing and everything. Just make sure you never find out. That warning echoed across the stars, a reminder that some boundaries were not meant to be crossed. For behind them lay the full weight of humanity's history, a truth so deep and resolute that the galaxy itself remembered and respected the cost of ignorance. The silence was not emptiness. It was vigilance, an enduring watch over peace, forged by lessons learned in shadow. And Earth remained there, a quiet force not forgotten, but deliberately unseen, holding a promise that the past would never be erased, and that no one would suffer the fate of silence again. The galaxy had learned to listen, not just to words, but to the quiet power of memory, the most dangerous weapon of all. For almost 100 years, no ship, probe, or signal dared to cross the invisible wall known as the Terran Exclusion Zone. After the mysterious and brutal Silence War, where dozens of fleets simply vanished without a trace, every species in the galaxy learned one hard lesson: stay away from human space. Earth had closed itself off, not with armies or treaties, but with silence. No patrols, no ambassadors, no trade. Just an eerie message looping at the edge of their borders in every known language. No entry, no exceptions. Over time, the warning became legend. Newer generations of aliens whispered about it, like a bedtime story, the kind meant to scare you into good behavior. But like all legends, there were those who stopped believing. The Ketran Assembly, proud and wealthy, operated merchant convoys across every known corridor of trade, and when one of their massive freighters, the Viralis Dawn, suffered a navigational glitch and drifted past the line it was believed to be a simple accident. At first, no one panicked. But when no reply came from the ship and no rescue drone returned, the Ketrans sent 3 scout crafts after it. Those 2 vanished. Then came the message, not from Earth, but from somewhere deep within what used to be Terran territory. The voice was distorted, old, and without emotion. It said, "This was your first breach, and your last." And then, silence returned. The Galactic Council met in emergency session, but no delegate wanted to speak first. No species wanted to risk sending another ship past the line. All remembered what happened a century ago, the fleets that entered human space, with weapons raised, only to disappear without a battle. Rumors had said Earth had developed something unnatural, that they didn't just defend, they erased. No debris, no data, no escape. Now, with the Ketran ship gone, fear returned to the stars like a long-lost shadow. Somewhere out there, in the quiet of Terran space, someone had been watching, waiting, and now they had spoken again. The Ketran Assembly, known across the stars for its pride and influence, refused to accept silence as an answer. They called it a misunderstanding, a navigational error, and sent not just a rescue team, but an entire diplomatic fleet armed, for protection, but carrying envoys and translators, banners of peace glowing across their halls. Their mission was clear: find the missing convoy, recover what they could, and prove that diplomacy could still exist, even with humans. The fleet moved cautiously toward the edge of Terran space, crossing into the zone with shields raised and comms open. But before they reached the last known coordinates of the Viralis Dawn, something strange happened. Sensors began to flicker, star maps twisted, gravity spiked, then fell to nothing. Ships turned in directions they didn't command. And then, silence. Complete and terrifying silence. From every angle of the galaxy, thousands of observation posts waited for a sign, any sign. But there was no explosion, no distress signal, no debris fields. Just a quiet folding of space, like the universe itself had swallowed the fleet whole. And in their place, a ripple of distortion, like a scar in reality that glowed for less than a second and vanished. Panic hit the Ketran Senate. Their most advanced ships, their top diplomats, had disappeared without a trace. No enemy had been seen, no warning given. But the message was clear. Not even peace would be allowed across that line. Then, from deep space, a lone probe returned damaged, burned, its memory core barely holding together. It had survived something it wasn't built to understand, and it played a single recording. The voice was calm, mechanical, ageless. Borders exist for a reason. History taught us why. You forgot. We did not. Those words echoed across council halls and war rooms. Rumors long buried began to rise again about the Black Array, a Terran defense network from the old wars, said not to destroy, but to erase, to fold entire fleets into silence. Theories came and went. Some said it was an AI weapon. Others said it was time itself turned into a guardian. But all agreed on one thing. The humans had never left. They had simply hidden behind a wall of memory and consequence. And now, with every ship that crossed the line, they reminded the galaxy why no one dared enter their space. Not because of hate, not even because of war, but because once upon a time, someone had tried to erase them and failed. And now they would make sure the stars never forgot Dr. Kevari had never believed in myths, especially those whispered around old Terran space. As one of the most respected historians of the Thalari Collective, she preferred facts, records, and evidence over the stories that frightened diplomats and kept traitors away from the Sol exclusion zone. But after the disappearance of the Ketran fleets and the mysterious probe that returned with a warning etched in machine logic, something in her changed. She received special access to sealed archives fragments of the ancient Silence War, so old most called it legend. What she found buried deep within fragmented data cores and corrupted logs shook her to her core. Contrary to popular belief, the Silence War hadn't started with a human invasion or aggression. It had started with fear from the larger, older galactic powers who saw humanity rising too quickly. Earth had advanced in decades what took others centuries. It wasn't just their technology, it was their adaptability, their unity during crisis, their refusal to accept limits. So, the great empires decided to act. Quietly, they formed a coalition. Plans were made. Fleets were dispatched. The attack wasn't to conquer, it was meant to cripple humanity before they could become a problem. But that was their mistake. Because Earth never responded with politics or panic. There were no speeches, no threats, just silence. Human embassies closed overnight. Ships vanished from trade routes. Entire colonies went dark. At first, the galaxy thought they had succeeded, but then the coalition began to fall apart. Not through battles, but through disappearances. Armadas went missing without distress calls. Defense grids shut down at the edge of Terran space. Space stations found themselves drifting, power drained, crews gone. No signs of damage. No survivors. No answers. The term Silence War was never given by Earth. It was what the survivors called it. A war where one side never spoke, never negotiated, never appeared. A war that left no wreckage, only absence. And the silence wasn't just a tactic, it was the punishment. Crossing into human space didn't trigger retaliation. It triggered removal. The kind of removal that didn't just erase ships, but memory. It was as if the price of invading Earth was being forgotten by the universe. Dr. Kevari traced every pattern, every vanishing fleet, and it always pointed back to one truth. Earth didn't build weapons to destroy. They built them to ensure. No one would dare try again. Now, with new disappearances happening, and Terran signals faintly echoing through deep space, she understood what was happening. The humans hadn't become isolationists because they were afraid. They had become guardians, not of territory, but of something greater, of lessons paid for in blood, of warnings long ignored, of memory itself. She stood before the Thalari Council, her hands trembling not with fear, but urgency. And with her voice steady, she gave the only explanation. That made sense. You thought they hid out of fear. But they didn't. They watched and remembered. They aren't protecting borders. They're protecting the past. So we never repeat it. Around her, silence fell, not the kind that ended debate, but the kind that chilled the air. Because, for the first time in centuries, the council realized what they were dealing with was not just a lost people or a hidden world, but a force that could erase without firing a shot. And now, that force had stirred again.